Hi, my name is Nevada. I am a community pharmacist and registered nurse. For the past 20 years of my career, I have dedicated my life to helping my patients return to health and purpose. Today, I am here not as an expert or as a healthcare provider, but as an empowered patient that was diagnosed with a rare and often neglected syndrome called Cauda equina syndrome. Today, I will be presenting my journey in my recovery and how I created my own healing protocol. For the disclaimer, the following presentation is not to be taken as medical advice because this is solely the story of my journey. Please consult your medical provider prior to making any changes in your nutrition, sleep, fitness, or quantum mindset. Behind every statistic, there is a person learning to cope with a rare illness, where little is known and treatment is often elusive. In the United States, a rare illness is defined as affecting less than 200,000 people. The NIH lists 7,000 rare or neglected diseases. Only 500 of them have treatment. When I say neglected, I mean there is little to no research. There is lack of a treatment or guideline or even a protocol in how to recover or manage. This may seem like a small amount of patient population, but collectively it's estimated that 25 to 30 million Americans are living with a rare or neglected illness, trying to navigate the healthcare system, looking for some glimpse of hope, a treatment or a cure that will prolong their life or improve the quality of the body that they must live in every day. Imagine being 38 years old, in the prime of your life, and waking up one morning paralyzed from the waist down and incontinent of your bladder. This is what happened to me on January 5th of 2016. I was diagnosed with a rare and neglected syndrome called Cauda equina syndrome due to a massive L5-S1 central disc herniation in my lumbar spine. What is Cauda equina syndrome? Cauda equina syndrome refers to a constellation of symptoms that occur when the nerves in the cauda equina, which is a collection of nerve roots that spread out from the bottom of the spinal cord, become compressed or damaged. The nerve roots connect the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system, so they are very important. Because patients are often not followed and cases not reported, the epidemiology will range from 1 in 33,000 to 1 in 100,000 patients impacted each year. This, as I stated, Cauda equina syndrome is listed as a rare illness by the National Institute of Health. When do you know if your average back pain is a medical or surgical emergency? There are often red flags that present. The first will be excruciating, suicidal pain, a pain that you have never felt before in your life. You'll experience numbness, weakness of the lower back or legs, saddle anesthesia, loss of bowel or bladder control, drop foot, and sexual dysfunction. Cauda equina syndrome is often diagnosed by an MRI, which is the gold standard, along with physical exam findings. However, the syndrome can often be missed because it mimics other diseases, and the physician may simply be unaware of the red flags and send a patient home with medication to manage their back pain. Causes of Cauda equina syndrome can be due to a herniated disc, a tumor, trauma, infection, or complications from surgical intervention. The treatment is always going to be emergent decompressive surgery. Studies show that the best chance of outcome diminishes after the critical 24 to 48-hour window. Therefore, it's very important that these patients are recognized and triaged to a high-level medical center for this emergent surgery. Prior to my diagnosis and surgery, I was your average overweight female. I was struggling with polycystic ovarian syndrome, prediabetes, and chronic allergies that plagued me my whole life due to oral allergy syndrome, which is also known as pollen allergy syndrome. As I stated, I'm also a healthcare provider. I have a dual bachelor's degree in biology and chemistry and nursing, and a doctor of pharmacy degree, being a community pharmacist. Despite following everything I learned in college, nutrition class, I graduated pharmacy school weighing 220 pounds. I felt like a failure because not only could I not help myself, I was losing confidence that I could help my patients. 2 years prior to my surgery, I was able to lose 50 pounds following a paleo diet and working out for 2 hours every day. This was a hard 50 pounds to lose and a struggle to maintain. Fast forward to 2016, I was discharged home with services after my surgery. I was able to recover my bladder function, but I was left with a combination of sensory and motor dysfunction in my right leg. I was unable to feel my right foot on the ground, and I was unable to walk with a normal gait or stand for prolonged periods of time. In medicine, we often use guidelines and protocols to help our patients recover and manage a diagnosis. In Cauda equina syndrome, there was no protocol on how to manage or recover, other than a prescription for physical therapy and medications to manage my spasticity and pain. My neurosurgeon was extremely hopeful for a full recovery, and he did everything he could for me to get me through the first 12 weeks. And my new primary care doctor supported me for the next 2 years. I'm extremely grateful for the care that they provided me during this time. However, oftentimes in a journey like this, you'll hear the words from well-intentioned physicians stating, "I'm sorry, there is nothing more we can do for you." These are hard words to swallow and very hard to deal with, especially when you don't know what to do yourself. Shortly after being discharged home, I Googled Cauda equina syndrome against my neurosurgeon's medical advice. Needless to say, I freaked out. I didn't see people recovering. Patients had deficits. They had severe pain, severe depression, and anxiety. After having a good hard cry and scream and having one of the worst days I've ever had in my life, I paged my neurosurgeon, who reassured me he still thought a full recovery was possible, but it would take hard work and the greatest act of patience. He also told me to stay away from Dr. Google. After this phone call, I called a friend, still discouraged. This friend encouraged me to get on YouTube and to watch videos of people who beat the odds. I happened upon a man who cured himself from degenerative disc and spine disease with fitness and nutrition. His name was Shawn Stevenson. At this moment, I had hope. I knew what I had to do. I knew if there was no protocol to cure or manage or even put Cauda equina syndrome and my other medical conditions in remission, I would have to create this protocol myself. So what I did is I started to empower myself through research and education. I was on PubMed daily, searching for everything available regarding Cauda equina syndrome and neurological conditions. I sought out scientists, doctors, and experts studying my problem point, many of which are on the speaker panel of KetoCon today. I extrapolated scientific data and strategy that may be applicable to my circumstances from other neurological injuries and disease states. I began to trust my body's natural cues and rhythms. I instituted a nutrient therapy program where I needed to add the raw materials to repair, regenerate, and restore, as well as eliminate anti-nutrient and inflammatory foods in this process so that my body could heal and recover. It was through this process that I discovered the ketogenic diet. I stayed active. As a means to further empower myself, I decided to work toward a goal, and I enrolled in an online personal training certificate offered by the National Academy of Sports Medicine, despite not having any fitness background. I decided I needed to get my mindset right, because your diet is only as good as your mental operating system. But more importantly, I needed to find a positive community that I could heal in. With that, I set up my Instagram, The Paleo Pharmacist, and I was able to connect with many people in the community that were also healing through a ketogenic lifestyle, as well as many doctors and scientists that were researching ketosis and neurologic injury. When we build a house, we want to build it upon a strong foundation. So that's what I based my 4 pillars of recovery of my own personal protocol. My foundation was poured with intent and purpose because I had to have my firm why in place. Why I wanted to recover, why I wanted to go for everything in my life that I had been putting on the back burner because I didn't have the confidence to do it. My entire life was flashing before my eyes. Shawn Stevenson says, every cell in the body is capable of regenerating. The key is providing the body with the raw materials to do its job. And those raw materials were the four pillars in my recovery. That was ketogenic nutrition, restorative sleep, functional fitness, and a quantum mindset. It's not moving forward. I'm sorry. My slides are not moving forward for some reason. It's because I was just going to move my video back up here so I could see that's okay. Am I recording? Okay. The first pillar of my recovery was based on ketogenic nutrition. Hippocrates once said, "Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food." Bruce Lipton, the famous cell biologist and epigeneticist, also states that the fate of cells is primarily determined by the environment the cells find themselves in. Therefore, I needed to create the best environment for my nerves to recover, but also to solve the other problems that I was having in my medical conditions. In my research on the ketogenic diet, I found that the ketogenic diet is possibly motor and neuroprotective in neurologic injury and neurodegenerative conditions. The science also showed that peripheral nerves are vulnerable to injury, but capable of regeneration, depending on the injury type and what remains intact of those nerves. There are also endogenous stem cells in our body, ready to create what we need when we provide the raw materials and the environment for them to do their job. Research also suggests that fasting can stimulate mechanisms of autophagy that aid in peripheral nerve regeneration and mitigate the secondary chemical injuries that often follow the physical ones in spinal cord injury. The research also suggested that injured nerves display hypometabolism of glucose, therefore offering an alternative fuel supply to the nerves, where they may be able to generate more energy to do their job. I was extremely encouraged by published case reports by Sophia Clemens of the Paleomedicina group, which showed several patients were able to successfully stabilize and manage neurological cancers and conditions with a Paleolithic ketogenic diet, which was a 2-to-1 fat-to-protein ratio. I was equally encouraged by the research done by Dr. Wolfram Tetzlaff from ICORD, where his research suggested that every other day fasting in a ketogenic diet started at the time of injury can aid in the neuroplasticity and recovery of function after a cervical spinal cord injury. His landmark work showed that rubrospinal neurons can survive more than a year after injury and can be rescued and stimulated to regenerate. Although this was science conducted in the central nervous system disorders, I was hopeful that it could also be applied in peripheral nerve injury. During this time, I was also tested positive for gluten antibodies. So I researched gluten allergy, which I was not surprised to have given my extensive allergy history. I came across the work of Dr. Alessio Fasano out of the Mass General Hospital. And according to his research, there are 3 components of autoimmune illness: genetic susceptibility, environmental triggers, and compromised intestinal permeability. These were also factors that I had to factor in developing and formulating my ketogenic diet. Peripheral nerves are capable of regeneration based on type of injury and what is still intact of the nerve. Although this is too in-depth for this talk, I wanted you to be aware that there are several classification systems of peripheral nerve injury. The first is set-in, which is based on the severity of injury developed in 1942. Sunderland further refined set-in's classification in 1951, including 5 grades based on the histopathology of the nerve injury. Then there was Dellin and McKinnon in 1988, who proposed a grade 6 to account for different grades of injury along the same nerve. Luckily, the Cauda equina are peripheral nerves, and according to my research, peripheral nerves are capable of regeneration at 1 to 5 millimeters per day, depending on the size of the nerve and the injury classification. In formulating my ketogenic diet, I considered several factors. The nutrient density of the food. I needed foods that were rich in micronutrient profile. I also required foods that were from the best available sources: grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised, and organic. I needed to remove neurotoxins and inflammatory foods from my diet, correct for intestinal permeability issues, correct for obesity and metabolic issues because I was still carrying around a lot of extra weight that was putting stress on my lumbar spine. But most importantly, I required my diet to be enjoyable and sustainable. The first things I began to remove were sugar, alcohol, anti-nutrients, environmental, such as cleaning supplies and cosmetics, and reducing emotional stress, because we all know how stress can disrupt hormonal balance. In trying to do this on my own, I realized I was overwhelmed very quickly. So I sought out an expert, and I found my friend Vanessa Spina from Ketogenic Girl. So with meal plan in hand and meter in hand, I started about my journey. I also continued to research anti-nutrients and neurologic function. Although plant chemistry is often not studied in humans, there is quite an extensive body of research on the chemistry of plants. I was particularly interested in why plants may be causing an autoimmune and allergic response within myself, and how this could impact my neurologic recovery going forward. Specifically, there were three I was very interested in. The first one was oxalate, which are in plants to bind and eliminate extra calcium. There was a 2006 study that was very interesting to me by Gruber that showed that there was an incidence of 15% crystal deposit in herniated discs. We know that oxalate crystals can disrupt the extracellular matrix and possibly accelerate degenerative changes, compromising the integrity of the tissues of the spinal cord and cause annular tears and subsequent disc herniation. There was also phytate, which serves as a main storage form of phosphorus in seeds. Lucky for me, I'm severely allergic to most seeds, nuts, and grains. There was also the family of the nightshades, which are very popular in ketogenic diets, but I was having a terrible time with them. They were causing all sorts of rashes and allergic responses as well as swelling of joints. I also discovered that they were neurotoxic, that they bind the cholesterol and cell membranes, blocking an enzyme called cholinesterase, which breaks down a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. The acetylcholine is responsible for signaling between nerve and muscle cells. When acetylcholine builds up in muscle cells and become overstimulated, this can lead to paralysis. I'm not saying that tomatoes will paralyze you or act like nerve gas, but it was intriguing to me to see that there was chemistry within these that could potentially impact my nerve function. As I further researched the spectrum of ketogenic diets, I delved into the classical ketogenic diet, MCT oil ketogenic diet, low glycemic index diets, a modified Atkins, and the Paleolithic ketogenic diet. Mostly, I was looking to solve a problem because I was craving protein way more than any other macronutrient. When I delved in and evaluated the nutrient profile of fat compared to protein, I saw that fat was not very nutrient dense. I also had a lot of weight to lose. So I included my own fat stores in the fat percentage to increase my protein intake to see if it would make a difference in solving my metabolic problems as well as protecting my nerves. After 1 year on a ketogenic diet, I decided with confidence based on my research to reduce my diet to a zero carbohydrate diet and follow a Paleolithic ketogenic diet, similar to the one outlined by the Paleomedicina protocol. One of the biggest aspects of my journey was reading a book called Keto by Craig and Maria Emmerich. This book gave me the confidence and the strategy to be able to adjust my macronutrients, to be able to not only get the raw materials that my body needed, but also to prioritize how my body utilized fuel and stored the fuel. I had already eliminated alcohol because we know that alcohol is a neurotoxin. It can also interfere with weight loss. And on top of that, it interferes with restorative sleep. I had decided not to go with exogenous ketones after researching it because at that time, the research was still in its infancy. I had eliminated my carbohydrates. I had upped my protein to satisfy my cravings, but also to satisfy the micronutrient profile I was looking to obtain. And I toggled my fat based on how I felt and whether I needed fuel and whether I was losing weight. Craig and Maria generously allowed me to share their graphics that were in their book Keto so that I can highlight how the nutrient profile of beef and beef liver, which is a primary component of my diet, compared to many of the superfoods that we often see in ketogenic diet. Given this nutrient profile, I had confidence that I was getting what I needed for my body to heal, and also solve several of the other problems that I was experiencing, such as the PCOS symptoms and problems with oral allergy syndrome. Hydration was also another very important component of my healing protocol, because the spinal discs, they're cushions in our spine that allow for the movement. At birth, they're full of water, but as we age, they become more fibrous and inflexible. They're also non-vascular, and because there's no circulation, there has to be a means for these raw nutrients to get to the spine to heal, and that means is diffusion. So therefore, I focused on hydration, which was also a focus because as we start a ketogenic diet, we tend to lose a lot of fluid and electrolytes. My average hydration was 3 to 4 liters per day, along with proper electrolyte supplementation. Here's a typical meal that I often enjoy and a staple in my diet, which is a ribeye steak. My second pillar in building my house was restorative sleep. Restorative sleep is when we have non-REM and REM sleep and can pass 5 stages of sleep. The alternating stages allow the body to repair, regenerate, and restore. During deep sleep, the body also eliminates waste. And when our body is thrown out of circadian balance, we can become ill. A majority of our waste is eliminated via the lymphatic system in the body, or the glymphatic system in the brain, which is 10 times more active during sleep. Our cells shrink just to eliminate this waste. And of course, it's critical for our spinal discs to obtain the nutrients via diffusion. Research also suggests that the amount of sleep that you obtain each night can impact the amount of weight that you can lose. And we also know that the largest amount of secretion of human growth hormone that's endogenous to us exists when we sleep, and it assists in lean muscle growth, anti-aging, and the repair of our tissues. Ways I began to improve my sleep was getting enough sunlight, just getting outdoors in the fresh air. I broke my addiction to my telephone and computer and opted instead to read books at night and papers, looking for any clue or strategy in the scientific research that I could implement to improve my circumstances. Despite all efforts, I still cannot quit my caffeine addiction and still require my morning coffee. But I do not drink coffee afternoon because that can also impede my ability to get into restorative sleep. Another aspect that I took seriously was regulating my body temperature at night and making sure that my bedroom was set to 62 to 68 degrees so that my core body temperature was optimal for sleep. I also timed my sleep. I made sure I was in bed by 9 o'clock every night because research suggests that the best sleep window is between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. because our human growth hormone is highest. Therefore, I wanted to optimize the anabolic growth, development, and repair of my spine. I also invested in blackout shades. My room was pitch dark. And I trained with the rhythm of my body. I would often train in the morning, fasted 1 hour after waking to optimize my circadian rhythm and hormone levels. I avoided alcohol, and I also started a grounding practice. Every day I would go to the beach and I would walk on the wet sand because connecting to the surface of the earth balances the electrons in the body to decrease inflammation and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system of rest and digest and tune down our autonomic nervous system of fight or flight. Is it any wonder that many patients that experience spontaneous remission do so after returning from a vacation where they're able to ground? The third pillar of my house was functional fitness, and my extensive rehabilitation program was based on the work of Dr. Stuart McGill, who is the godfather of the spine. I stayed active and focused on what I could do versus what I couldn't do. I focused on correcting muscle imbalances along the posterior chain of my body. In doing this, I foam rolled and stretched overworked muscles. I strengthened weakened muscles through progressions. I trained with the rhythm of my body, and I set a goal to run a 5K and to complete my NASM personal training certificate. This illustration exhibits lower cross syndrome, also known as duck butt, which is a common muscle imbalance that people with spinal pain and injuries experience. And these were 4 of the muscle groups that I worked on extensively to create a strong core and strong glutes to be able to stabilize my lumbar spine, because I preferred a muscle fusion over a metal fusion. 10 months after my emergency surgery on Thanksgiving Day, I was able to run a full 5K in 35 minutes, despite not being able to feel my right foot on the ground. This was a monumental milestone for me in my recovery, because it not only built my confidence, it showed me that I could do what they said I could not do. Albert Einstein famously says, "Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. There can be no other way." Your diet is only as good as your mental operating system. So therefore, I needed to also work on my mental operating system. And pillar 4 is the quantum mindset. Spontaneous remission or miracles have long been documented in the history of the medical literature where healing cannot be explained. I became obsessed with spontaneous remission and healing during my recovery. I wanted to know what was it about these patients that allowed for them to heal, because I wanted to be one of those patients. In modern biomedicine, we have a central dogma that was developed by Francis Crick. The dogma is that the information in our body goes from DNA, RNA, to protein. And because we're made of protein, it's assumed our life is determined by the genes that we are born with. Modern medicine is very Newtonian in their viewpoint of the human body, because we tend to view it as a machine made out of mechanical parts. And when those parts break down, we replace those parts. So therefore, the focus is on the particle, which is equivalent in physics. Quantum mechanics is not based on the mechanical universe or the physical body. It's based instead on the invisible energy, which we call the field, of which we're immersed in. So the focus then becomes to understand the shape of the particle. We must understand that field. So in other words, the field gives shape to matter. We must understand our mindset to understand what shapes our body and health. The matrix is that invisible energy field. And this is the bridge between science and spirituality that brings the power of the mind into the healing process. You've all heard that mindset is everything. This is the science behind it. And this is what I was determined to learn, to create a quantum mindset. We've heard of the placebo effect. The mind can change the expression of health. Approximately 1/3 of healing is due to this effect. So if we have positive thoughts, we have a healing effect. There's also the nocebo effect, where thoughts of a negative nature can result in illness. Science shows us that 70% of our thoughts are negative and redundant. The key is the mind can influence the expression of the biology in the body. This is epigenetics. Our conscious mind is 5% of that mind. It's our creative mind. It's our spiritual identity. It's what we use to rationalize our outside world. We also have a subconscious mind, which is 95% of the whole. And that's a powerful information processor, kind of like a computer that's running programs in the background at all times, many of which we may not be aware of. Albert Einstein also says, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. The thoughts of the conscious mind compete with that program of the subconscious mind. This is why positive thinking alone does not work, because the conscious and subconscious mind are often not aligned. Our subconscious mind runs the show and the conscious mind is busy. And this is why we're often not able to see the programs being run in the background of our lives that are not serving our health or higher good. How many times have you gotten in your car and driven somewhere and have no idea how you got there or memory of the road you took because you're too busy thinking of something else? We often have a tendency to blame life circumstances on outside forces that trap us as a victim rather than seeing the subconscious programming, behaviors that result in the circumstances of our poor health. I didn't want to be a victim. I wanted to take 100% responsibility for my life and do whatever I could to heal from this catastrophic injury. Although this topic goes too deep for this presentation, it's important to understand that our operating system and our subconscious is run on brain waves. And one of the most important is the theta. because that's where we meditate. There's also the beta, which is the busy and active mind, and that's where our anxiety often resides. So how do we record a new subconscious program and create that quantum mindset during our healing? It's important to know that up to 6 years of age, you're downloading programs in the theta state from your environment. And these manifest as behaviors once the conscious mind develops. So as we're growing up before the age of 6, we're taking in information and downloading programs from the way we eat, from the way we behave, from all the stimulus in our environment. So one way that I used to reprogram my operating system was meditation. I learned strategies and techniques from some of the best in the field, as well as some of my friends that engaged in this practice daily. Meditation was best first thing in the morning and prior to bed to optimize these brain waves. I installed a new subconscious operating system through visualization. I created a vision board of my recovery and my future that hung on my refrigerator the entire first year that I was working towards this recovery. I had to have my why and my vision in front of me. I had my clear intention. I aligned my actions every day with what I wanted. That included working with these 4 pillars, from the way I ate, from the way I trained, from the activities that I engaged with that brought me joy. I used my emotions as my navigation system, because when I wasn't feeling good, I knew I was not aligned. But when I was feeling great, I knew I was aligned and on the right track. I also created a new routine and an environment that served my greater good to optimize my healing. In doing this, I made it sustainable and enjoyable and a part of my life that became effortless. At the end of my protocol of 2 years, I can happily say that I was able to solve multiple health problems. I was able to put my PCOS and prediabetes in complete remission. Since graduating pharmacy school, I lost a total of 92 pounds. I had a resolution and relief of allergy symptoms related to oral allergy syndrome that plagued me my entire life. I regained full motor and sensory recovery from the waist down over a 2-year period. But most importantly, I was pain and medication free. Everyone loves before and after pictures, so I included some for you to see my progress. The day I graduated pharmacy school, I used my diploma as a shield to shield my body in all my pictures because I felt terrible about myself. I could barely walk across the stage to accept my diploma with the extra 92 pounds I was carrying on my 5'4" frame. I also returned to metabolic health. The cosmetic changes of PCOS changed, and I felt like I looked like a different person. I also didn't have to worry about prediabetes or the other metabolic symptoms I was experiencing. Here are some more before and after pictures. And these are the pants that I graduated pharmacy school in. These are the only pairs of pants that I kept from this journey because it reminds me of where I came from and how far I've come. And I use these as motivation when I get discouraged in my journey. Christopher Reeve once said, "Once you choose hope, anything is possible." There's always hope. Never stop searching for your miracle. I shared my story today in the hope that it will help generate interest in research using a ketogenic diet option in neurological injury to the Cauda equina, as well as other neurological injury and degenerative conditions. I hope that it may be a key in the recovery to another person diagnosed with this devastating syndrome. And most importantly, I hope that it increased provider awareness and prompt recognition of the red flags exhibited in Cauda equina syndrome patients presenting with back pain. Many people in the ketogenic community contributed to my journey and the success of my recovery. And I cannot thank them enough for answering my questions, for writing their books, and for putting this amazing content out, and also for sharing their own journeys. And this is just a small list, not all inclusive, that I wanted to put here for everybody. Thank you.